Look Up, written by Robert Burleigh, illustrated by Raoul Colin. Night after night, Henrietta sat on her front porch gazing up at the stars. How high is the sky? She wanted to know everything about the wonderful bigness of all she saw. The more she looked up, the bigger the sky seemed to get. It seemed endless. On cloudless evenings, she found the Big Dipper inching its slow, glittering track across the night sky. She drew an imaginary line from the Dipper's pan. See? It leads to the North Star. Sometimes she felt the stars were trying to speak, to tell her what they knew. When Henrietta was a young woman, almost all astronomy teachers and students were men. In an astronomy class, she was always one of the very few women students, but Henrietta wanted to follow what she loved wherever it took her. And most of all, she loved the sense of vast distances. Light years, the distance that light can travel in 1 year, about 6 trillion miles. And many stars were light years away. Think of it, amazing. After graduating, Henrietta worked in an observatory where people studied the stars. In the observatory was a giant telescope. Even so, Henrietta seldom had a chance to gaze through it to see the stars up close. Instead, she worked in a small room alongside other women. The hours were long and the pay was only 30 cents an hour. The women who worked there were human computers. Their job was to record, and measure, and calculate. The women were expected to work, not think. But Henrietta had other ideas. Didn't she have a mind, and couldn't she use it? Each day, she peered through a magnifying glass to measure tiny star dots on photographs of the previous night sky. On the photographs, the stars resembled little bits of dust. What could these tiny dots tell her? What were they saying? Henrietta kept studying in her spare time. She read about the lives of the great astronomers. She loved to repeat to herself her favorite sky words: asteroids, comet dust, and eclipse. Copernicus, Galileo. At work, she looked and looked and looked until her eyes blurred. When she closed her eyes, she could still see the star dots dancing across the inside of her eyelids. Day after day, there were new photographs of stars to look at. Day after day, Henrietta returned to the small, stuffy room and together with the other women workers studied the photographs. She measured, she took notes, she looked, and looked, and looked. Slowly, she began to see tiny differences between the star dots. She especially studied a group of stars that glowed and dimmed and then glowed again. She even discovered some blinking stars that no one had ever discovered before. But there was still more to do. Patiently, Henrietta worked on. She recorded the number of nights it took for each blinking star to go from dim to bright, or from off to on. One day, she realized something. Some very bright stars blinked more slowly than the less bright stars. What could this mean? She began to keep a careful chart. Suddenly, Henrietta saw a pattern. A slow blink time meant that a star contained lots of light power, or brightness, and if the blink time was measured even slower, the star contained even more light. By measuring the time it took for a star to go from off to on, one could tell the true brightness of any blinking star in the sky, even if it was just a faint speck far, far away. The head astronomer at the observatory was amazed. When astronomers know the true brightness of a star, it helps them figure out how far the star is from the Earth. Henrietta was onto something. A breakthrough. Yes, I am an astronomer. Henrietta published her chart in a magazine. She was proving that the smallest observation, the tiniest discovery, often leads to something very important. Around this time, most people thought the Milky Way, the galaxy containing the Earth, made up the whole universe. But not anymore. Henrietta's chart helped astronomers measure distances much farther away. First, the Milky Way itself was found to stretch out farther than anyone thought. Next, astronomers discovered even more galaxies, many of them. The universe was far more vast than anyone had ever dreamed. The stars had spoken to Henrietta. Still, she kept working. One winter night, walking home from the observatory, she stopped. The sky was cold and very clear. She suddenly remembered her childhood long ago when she had gazed up from her parents' front porch. Yes, it is the same beautiful and mysterious sky, but now it is so much bigger. Henrietta smiled. Her mind roamed. She dreamed. She whispered to herself again, "How high? How high is the sky?" The end.